it's just, I knew that I had to put a lot of this stuff to action. I couldn't just keep collecting notebook after notebook after notebook of amazing, ideas, facts, wisdom, knowledge, stuff that's passed along through families, it's not even written down anywhere. Whether I'm a Reiki master, so I do holistic healing. I do hands-on work, body work that I learned from a Filipino who learned from his grandparents when he started at 4 years old in the Philippines, just watching, then putting hands on people, then putting his hands on me. And I'm like, you need to teach me this stuff. And he started to. He's like, you better be paying attention, because he kept working on me. I'm like, so I've been at that for like probably 8-9 years now. Natasha, one of her main mentors, I would assume, Mr. Nelson, was one of my clients who just really shifted and changed my life. And it was when I'm teaching him and he's actually teaching me. I mean, he's known all over the world, and I get to spend thousands of hours with this man. So same with Zappia. Mike Zappia is like, I've known him for almost 30 years. And it's like, how do these people keep coming in? Well, it's because I understand I have a gift to share. So back to this, this whole thing. This year was like, all right, I need to read more. I need to spread more knowledge. I need to start more, groups of people that are looking to elevate in different ways. Dave has been with me for over a year now. I've been mentoring him. He's been mentoring me in a different way because he's given me all this feedback. And then we've developed other side projects and businesses off to the side that we never even knew. Wasn't the best things in life are never planned.
No.
You have a plan, you have a foundation and what you're looking to do. Like this book, every time I've read it, it's a different, but it's the same. We're still going to the same place. I just didn't know these places existed. So this book has really opened my mind to so much more. And then every time you learn more, it just becomes more. So anyway, that's a little bit about me and how this got started. But I'm going to share the screen and we'll just get started reading here. And I know, Natasha, you don't have much time, correct?
Yes, I will start reading first. How about that?
Go ahead. Chapter 2.
Okay. Chapter 2, Desire. The starting point of all achievement, the first step towards riches. When Edwin Seaborn climbed down from the fern tree in Orange, New Jersey, and more than 30 years ago, he may have resembled a tramp, but his thought was those of a king. As he made his way from railroad tracks to Thomas A. Edison's office, his mind was at work. He saw himself standing in Edison's presence. He heard himself asking for Mr. Edison for an opportunity to carry out the one consuming obsession of his life, a burning desire to become the business associate of the great inventor. Barr's desire was not a hope, it was not a wish. It was a keen, pulsating desire, which transcended everything else. It was definite. The desire was not new when he approached Edison. It had been Barr's dominating desire for a long time. In the beginning, when the desire first appeared in his mind, it may have been probably was an only wish, but it was no mere wish when he appeared before Edison with it. A few years later, Edwin Seaborn again stood before Edison in the same office where he first met the inventor. This time, his desire has been translated into reality. He was in business with Edison. The dominant dream of his life has become a reality. Today, people who know Barr envy him because the break life yielded him. They see him in the day of his triumph without taking the trouble to investigate the cause of his success. Barr's success because he chose a definite goal, placed all his energy, all his power, all his effort, everything back of that goal. He did not become the partner of Edison the day he arrived. He was content to start in the most menial work as long as it provided opportunity to take even one step towards his cherished goal. 5 years passed before the chance he had been seeking made its appearance. During all those years, not one ray of hope, not one promise of obtaining his desire has been held out to him. To everyone except himself, he appeared only another cog in the Edison's business wheel. But in his own mind, he was the partner of Edison every minute of the time, from the very day that he first went to work there. It is a remarkable illustration of power of definite desire. Barn won his goal because he wanted to be a business associate of Mr. Edison more than he wanted anything else. He created a plan by which to attain that purpose, but he burned all bridges behind him. He stood by his desire until it became a dominating obsession of his life, and finally a fact. When he went to Orange, he did not say to himself, I will try to introduce Edison to give me, I try to induce Edison to give me a job of some sort. And he said, I will see Edison and put him on notice that I have come going to business with him. He did not say I will work there for a few months, and if I get no encouragement, I will quit and get a job somewhere else. He did not say I will start anywhere and I will do anything Edison tell me to do, but before I am though, I will be his associate. He did not say I will keep my eyes open for another opportunity in case I fail to get what I want in Edison's organization. He said, there is but one thing in this world that I am determined to have, and that is a business association with Mr. Thomas A. Edison. I will burn all bridges behind me and stake my entire future on my ability to get what I want. He left himself no possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. That's all there to the Barnes story of success. A long while ago, a great warrior faced a situation which made it necessary for him to make a decision which ensured his success on the battlefield. He was about to send his army against a powerful foe. Those men outnumbered his own. He loaded his soldier into boats, sailed to the enemy's country, unloaded the soldier and equipped, then gave the order to burn the ships that has carried them. Addressing his men before the first battle, said, you see the boat going up in smoke? That means we cannot leave these shore alive until we win. And we now have no choice. We win or we perish. They won.
Let me go. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn the ships and cut all sources of retreat. Only by doing so can one be sure of maintaining that state of mind known as the burning desire to win, essential to success. The morning after the Great Chicago Fire, a group of merchants stood on the street, looking at the smoking remains of what had been their stores. They went into a conference to decide if they would try to rebuild or leave Chicago and start over in a more promising section of the country. They reached a decision, all except one, to leave Chicago. The merchant who decided to stay and rebuild pointed a finger at the remains of his stores and said, gentlemen, on that very spot, I will build the world's greatest store, no matter how many times it may burn down. That was more than 50 years ago. The store was built. It stands there today, a towering monument of the power of the state of mind known as a burning desire. The easy thing for Marshall Field to have done would have been exactly what his fellow merchants did. When the going was hard and the future looked dismal, they pulled up and went where the going seemed easier. Mark well this difference between Marshall Field and the other merchants, because it is the same difference which distinguished Edwin C. Barnes from thousands of other young men who have worked for Edison's organization. It is the same difference which distinguishes practically all those who succeed from those who fail. Every human being who reaches the age of understanding of the purpose of money wishes for it. Wishing will not bring riches, but desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession, then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches and backing those plans with persistence, which does not recognize failure, will bring riches. The method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent consists of 6 definite practical steps, viz. First, fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money. Be definite about the amount. There's a physiological reason for definiteness, which will be described in the subsequent chapter. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such reality as something for nothing. Third, establish a definite date which you intend to possess the money you desire. Fourth, create the definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into action. Fifth, write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire. Name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give in return for the money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. 6, read your written statement out loud twice daily, once before retiring at night and once as you arise in the morning. As you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. Want to go, Dave?
Sure. It is important that you follow the instructions described in these 6 steps. It is especially important that you observe and follow the instructions in the 6th paragraph. You may complain that it is impossible for you to see yourself in possession of money before you actually have it. Here is where a burning desire will come to your aid. If you truly desire money so keenly that your desire is an obsession, you will have no difficulty in convincing yourself that you will acquire it. The object is to want money and to become so determined to have it that you convince yourself you will have it. Only those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches. Money consciousness means that the mind has become so thoroughly saturated with the desire for money that one can see oneself already in possession of it. To the uninitiated, who has not been schooled in the working principles of the human mind, these instructions may appear impractical. It may be helpful to all who fail to recognize the soundness of the 6 steps to know that the information they convey was received from Andrew Carnegie, who began as an ordinary laborer in the steel mills, but managed, despite his humble beginning, to make these principles yield him a fortune of considerably more than $100 million. It may be of further help to know that the 6 steps here recommended were carefully scrutinized by the late Thomas A. Edison, who placed his stamp of approval on them as being not only the steps essential for accumulation of money, but necessary for the attainment of any definite goal. The steps call for no hard labor. They call for no sacrifice. They do not require one to become ridiculous or credulous. To apply them calls for no great amount of education, but the successful application of these 6 steps does call for sufficient imagination to enable one to see and to understand that accumulation of money cannot be left to chance, good fortune, and luck. One must realize that all who have accumulated great fortunes first did a certain amount of dreaming, hoping, wishing, desiring, and planning before they acquired money. You may as well know right here that you can never have riches in great quantities unless you can work yourself into a white heat of desire for money and actually believe you will possess it. You may as well know also that every great leader from the dawn of civilization down to the present was a dreamer. Christianity is the greatest potential power in the world today because its founder was an intense dreamer who had the vision and the imagination to see realities in their mental and spiritual form before they had been transmuted into physical form. If you do not see great riches in your imagination, you will never see them in your bank balance. Never in the history of America has there been so great an opportunity for practical dreamers as now exists. The 6-year economic collapse has reduced all men substantially to the same level. A new race is about to run. The stakes represent huge fortunes which will be accumulated within the next 10 years. The rules of the race have changed because we now live in a changed world that definitely favors the masses, those who had but little or no opportunity to win under the conditions existing during the Depression, when fear paralyzed growth and development. Good pass, good time.
Anybody like to go?
Don, you want to read? Or Joe?
We're right here. Anybody?
I'll jump in.
All right.
Okay. We who are in the race for riches should be encouraged to know that this changed world in which we live is demanding new ideas, new ways of doing things, new leaders, new inventions, new methods of teaching, new methods of marketing, new books, new literature, new features for the radio, new ideas for moving pictures. Back of all this demand for new and better things, there's one quality one must possess to win, and that is the definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, a burning desire to possess it. The business
You muted, Derek.
Okay, back. Where did I leave off? The definition of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, a burning desire to possess it. The business depression marked the death of one age and the birth of another. This changed world requires practical dreamers who can and will put their dreams into action. The practical dreamers have always been and always will be the pattern makers of civilization. We who desire to accumulate riches should remember the real leaders of this world always have been men who've harnessed and put into practical use the intangible, unforeseen forces of unborn opportunity and have converted those forces or impulses of thought into skyscrapers, cities, factories, airplanes, automobiles, and every form of convenience that makes life more pleasant. Tolerance and open mind are practical necessities of the dreamer of today. Those who are afraid of new ideas are doomed before they start. Never has there been a time more favorable to the pioneers than the present. True, there is no wild and woolly west to be conquered, and as in the days of the covered wagon, but there is a vast business, financial, and industrial world to be remolded and redirected along new and better lines. In planning to acquire your share of the riches, let no one influence you to scorn the dreamer. To win the big stakes in this changed world, you must catch the spirit of the great pioneers of the past, whose dreams have given civilization all that it has to value, the spirit which serves as the lifeblood of our own country, your opportunity and mine to develop and market your talents. Let us not forget, Columbus dreamed of an unknown world, staked his life on the existence of such a world, and discovered it. Copernicus, the great astronomer, dreamed of a multiplicity of worlds and revealed them. No one denounced him as impractical after he had triumphed. Instead, the world worshiped at his shrine, thus proving once more that success requires no apologies, failure permits no alibis. If the thing you wish to do is right and you believe in it, go ahead and do it. Put your dreams across and never mind what they say if you meet the temporary defeat, or if for they perhaps do not know that every failure brings with it a seed of an equivalent success. Henry Ford, poor and uneducated, dreamed of a horseless carriage, went to work with the tools that he possessed without waiting for opportunity to favor him. Now evidence of his dream belts the entire earth. He has put more wheels into operation than any man who ever lived because he was not afraid to back his dreams. Thomas Edison dreamed of a lamp that could be operated by electricity, began where he stood to put his dreams into action. Despite more than 10,000 failures, he stood by that dream until he made it a physical reality. Practical dreamers do not quit. Wayland dreamed of a chain of cigar stores, transformed his dream into action, and now the United Cigar Stores occupy the best corners in America. Lincoln dreamed of freedom for the Black slaves and put his dream into action, barely missed living to see a united North and South translate his dream into reality. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that would fly through the air. Now one may see evidence all over the world that they dreamed soundly. Marconi dreamed of a system for harnessing the intangible forces of ether. Evidence that he did not dream in vain may be found in every wireless and radio in the world. Moreover, Marconi's dream brought the humblest cabins and most stately manor house side by side. It made the people of every nation on the earth backdoor neighbors. It gave the president of the United States a medium by which he could talk to all the people of America at one time. And on short notice, it may interest you to know that Marconi's friends had taken him into custody, examined in a psychopathic hospital when he announced that he had discovered a principle through which he could send messages through the air without the aid of wires or other direct physical means of communication. The dreamers of today fare better. The world has become accustomed to new discoveries. Nay, it has shown a willingness to reward the dreamer who gives the world a new idea. The greatest achievement was at first and for a time, but a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn. The bird waits in the egg. And in the highest vision of the soul, a wakened angel stirs. Dreams are the seedlings of reality. Arise, awake, arise, and assert yourself. You dreamers of the world, your star is now in the ascendancy. The world depression brought the opportunity that you've been waiting for. It taught people humility, tolerance, and open-mindedness. The world is filled with an abundance of opportunity which the dreamers of the past never knew. A burning desire to be and to do is the starting point from which the dreamer must take off. Dreams are not born of indifference, laziness, or lack of ambition. The world no longer scoffs at the dreamer, nor calls him impractical. If you think it does, take a trip to Tennessee and witness the dreamer president, what a dreamer president has done in the way of harnessing and using the great water power of America. A score of years ago, such a dream would have seemed like madness. You have been disappointed. You have undergone defeat during depression. You have felt the great heart within you crushed until it bled. Take courage, for these experiences have tempered the spiritual metal of which you are made. They are assets of incomparable value. Remember, too, that all who succeed in life get off to a bad start, pass through many heartbreaking struggles before they arrive. The turning point in the lives of those who succeed usually come at the moments of some crisis through which they are introduced to their other selves. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress, which is among the finest of all English literature, after he had been confined in prison and sorely punished because of his views on the subject of religion. O. Henry discovered the genius which slept within his brain after he had met with great misfortune and was confined in a prison cell in Columbus, Ohio, being forced through misfortune to become acquainted with his other self and to use his imagination. He discovered himself to be a great author instead of a miserable criminal and outcast. Strange and varied are the ways of life. Stranger still are the ways of infinite intelligence through which men are sometimes forced to undergo all sorts of punishment before discovering their own brains, their own capacity to create useful ideas through imagination. Edison, the world's greatest inventor and scientist, was a tramp telegraph operator. He failed innumerable times before he was driven finally to the discovery of the genius which slept within his brain. Charles Dickens began by pasting labels on blacking pots. The tragedy of his first love penetrated the depths of his soul and converted him into one of the world's truly great authors. That tragedy produced first David Copperfield and then a succession of other works that made this a richer and better world for all who read his books. Disappointment over love affairs generally has an effect of driving men to drink and women to ruin. This because most people never learn the art of transmuting their strongest emotions into dreams of a constructive nature. Helen Keller became deaf, dumb, and blind shortly after birth. Despite her greatest misfortune, she has written her name indelibly in the pages of history, of the great. Her entire life has served as an evidence that no one ever is defeated until defeat has been accepted as a reality. Robert Burns was an illiterate country lad who was cursed by poverty and grew up a drunkard in the bargain. The world was made better for his having lived because he clothed beautiful thoughts in poetry, thereby plucked a thorn and planted a rose in its place. Booker T. Washington was born in slavery, handicapped by race and color, because he was tolerant and had an open mind at all times on all subjects and was a dreamer. He left his impress for good on an entire race. Beethoven was deaf, Milton was blind, but their names will last as long as time endures because they dreamed and translated their dreams into organized thoughts. Before passing into the next chapter, kindle anew in your mind a fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. If you have these states of mind and a working knowledge of the principles described, all else that you need will come to you. And when you are ready for it, let Emerson state the thought in these words. Every proverb, every book, every byword that belongs to thee for aid and comfort shall surely come home through open and winding passages. Every friend whom not thy fantastic will, but the great and tender soul in thee craveth, shall lock thee in his embrace. There's a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing until he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief, not mere hope or wish. Open-mindedness is essential for belief. Closed minds do not inspire faith, courage, and belief. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life and to demand abundance and prosperity than is required to accept misery and poverty. A great poet has correctly stated his universal truth through these lines. I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is just an employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial hire, only to learn dismay that any wage that I had asked of life, life would willingly pay. Desire outwits Mother Nature. Can I do like one?
You want me to go?
Yeah, somebody jump in there right quick.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. Desire outwits Mother Nature. As a fitting climax to this chapter, I wish to introduce one of the most unusual persons I have ever known. I first saw him 24 years ago, a few minutes after he was born. He came into this world without any physical sign of ears, and the doctor admitted, when pressed for an opinion, that the child might be deaf and mute for life. I challenged the doctor's opinion. I had the right to do so. I was the child's father. I too reached a decision and rendered an opinion, but I expressed the opinion silently. In the secrecy of my own heart, I decided that my son would hear and speak. Nature could send me a child without ears, but nature could not induce me to accept the reality of the affliction. In my own mind, I knew that my son would hear and speak. How? I was sure there must be a way, and I knew I would find it. I thought of the words of immortal Emerson, the whole curse of things to teach us faith. We need only obey. There is guidance for each of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word. The right word, desire. More than anything else, I desired that my son should not be a deaf mute. From that desire, I never receded, not for a second. Many years previously, I had written, our only limitations are those that we set up in our own mind. For the first time, I wondered if that statement were true. Lying on the bed in front of me was a newborn child without natural equipment of hearing. Even though he might hear and speak, he was obviously disfigured for life. Surely this was a limitation which that child had not set up in his own mind. What could I do about it? Somehow I would find a way to transplant into the child's mind my own burning desire for ways and means of conveying sound to his brain without the aid of ears. As soon as the child was old enough to cooperate, I would fill his mind so completely with a burning desire to hear that nature would, by methods of her own, translate it into physical reality. All this thinking took place in my own mind, but I spoke of it to no one. Every day I renewed the pledge I bade made to myself, not to accept a deaf mute child. As soon as he grew older and began to take notice of things around him, we observed that he had a slight degree of hearing. When he reached the age when children usually began talking, he made no attempt to speak. But we could tell by his actions that he could hear certain sounds slightly. That was all I wanted to know. I was convinced that if he could hear even slightly, he might develop still greater hearing capacity. Then something happened that gave me hope. It came from an entirely unexpected source. We brought home a Victrola. When the child heard the music for the first time, he went into ecstasies and promptly appropriated the machine. He soon showed preference to certain records among them. It's a long way to Tipperary. On one occasion, he played that piece over and over for almost 2 hours, standing in front of the Victrola. With his teeth clamped on the edge of the case, the significance of the self-formed habit of what he did not clear until years afterwards. For we had never heard the principle of bone conduction of sound at that time. Shortly after he appropriated the Victrola, I discovered that he could hear me quite clearly when I spoke with my lips touching the mastoid bone or the base of my brain, or at the base of the brain. This discovery placed in my possession the necessary media by which I began to translate into the reality my burning desire to help my son develop hearing and speech. By the time he was making stabs at speaking certain words, the outlook was far from encouraging, but desire backed by faith knows such word as impossible. Having determined that he would hear the sound of my voice plainly, I began immediately to transmute to his mind the desire to hear and to speak. I soon discovered that my child enjoyed bedtime stories, so I went to work creating stories designed to develop in him self-resilience, imagination, and keen desire to hear and to be normal. There was one story in particular which I emphasized by giving it some new and dramatic coloring each time I told it. It was designed to plant in his mind the thought that his affliction was not a liability, but an asset of great value. Despite the fact that all of the physiologically I had been examined, clearly identified that every adversity brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage, I must confess that I did not have the slightest idea how this affliction could ever become an asset. However, I continued my practice of wrapping the philosophy in bedtime stories, hoping that the time would come when he would find some plan by which his handicap could be made to serve some useful purpose. Reason told me plainly that there was no adequate compensation for the lack of ears and natural hearing equipment. Desire backed by faith pushed reason aside and inspired me to carry on. As I analyzed the experience in retrospect, I can see now that my son's faith in me had much to do with his astounding results. He did not question anything I told him. I sold him the idea he had the distinct advantage over his older brother, and that is the advantage would reflect itself in many ways. For example, the teachers in school would observe that he had no ears, and because of this, they would show him special attention and treat him with extraordinary kindness. They always did. His mother saw to that by visiting the teachers and arranging with them to give the child the extra attention necessary. I sold him on the idea too that he became old enough to sell newspapers. His older brother had already become a newspaper merchant. He would have a big advantage over his brother for the reason that the people would pay him extra money for his wares because they could see that he was bright, industrious boy, despite the fact he had no ears. We could notice that gradually the child's hearing was improving. Moreover, he had not the slightest tendency to be self-conscious because of his affliction. When he was about 7, he showed the first evidence that our method of servicing his mind was bearing fruit. For several months, he begged for the privilege of selling newspapers, but his mother would not give her consent. She was afraid that his deafness made it unsafe for him to go out on the streets alone. Finally, he took matters into his own hands. One afternoon, when he left at home with the servants, he climbed through the kitchen window, chin to the ground, and set out on his own. He borrowed 6 cents in capital from a neighbor shoemaker and invested it in papers, sold out, reinvested, and kept repeating until late in the evening. After balancing his accounts and paying back the 6 cents he had borrowed from the banker, he had a net profit of 42 cents. When we got home that night, we found him in bed asleep with the money tightly clenched in his hand. His mother opened his hand and removed the coins and cried. Of all things, crying over his son's first victory seemed so inappropriate. My reaction was the reverse. I laughed heartily, for I knew that my endeavor to plant in the child's mind an attitude of faith in himself had been successful. His mother saw in his first business venture a little deaf boy who'd gone out in the streets and risked his life to earn money. I saw a brave, ambitious, self-reliant little businessman whose stock in himself had been increased 100% because he had gone into business on his own initiative and had won. The transaction pleased me because I knew that he had given evidence of a trait of resilience or resourcefulness that would go with him all throughout life. Later events proved this to be true. When his older brother wanted something, he would lie down on the floor, kick his feet in the air, cry for it, and get it. When the little deaf boy wanted something, he would plan a way to earn the money and buy it for himself. He still follows that plan. Anybody want to go? Anybody?
I can. Truly, my own son has taught me that handicap can be converted into stepping stone on which one may climb towards some worthy goals, unless they are accepted as obstacle and used as alibis. The little deaf boy went through the grade school, high school, and college without being able to hear his teacher except when they shout loudly at a close range. He did not go to school. For deaf. We would not permit him to learn the sign language. We were determined that he should live a normal life and associate with normal children. And we stood by that decision, although it cost us many a heated debate with school officials. While he was in school, he tried an electronic hearing aid, but it was of no value to him. Due, we believe, to a condition that was disclosed when the child was 6 by Dr. J. Gordon Wilson of Chicago. When he operated on one side of the boy's head and discovered that there was no sign of natural hearing equipment. During his last week in college, 18 years after the operation, something happened which marked the most important turning point in his life. Through that seemed to be a mere chance, he came into possession of another electronic hearing devices, which he was sent to him on trial. He was slow about testing it. Due to his disappointment with a similar device, finally he picked up the instrument up and more or less carelessly placed it on his head, hook up the battery, and as if their stroke of magic, his life desiring for normal hearing became a reality. For the first time in his life, he heard practically as well as any person with normal hearing. God moved in mysterious ways. He is wonder to perform. Overjoyed because the changed word which has been brought to him through his hearing devices, he rushed to the telephone and called his mother and heard her voice perfectly. The next day, he plainly heard the voice of his professor in class for the first time in his life. Previously, he could hear them only when they shout at a short range. He heard the radio, he heard the talking picture for the first time in his life. He could converse freely with other people without the necessity of their having to speak loudly. Truly, he had come into possession of a changed world. We had refused to accept nature's error. And by persistent desire, we have induced nature to correct that error through one practical means available. Desire has commenced to pay dividends, but the victory was not yet complete. The boy still has to find a definite and practical way to convert his handicap into an equivalent asset. hardly realizing the significance of what he had already been accomplished, but intoxicated with the joy of his newly discovered world of sound. He wrote a letter to the manufacturer of the hearing aid, enthusiastically described his experience. Something in his letter, something perhaps which was not written on the line, but the back of them caused the company to invite him to New York. When he arrived, he was escorted through the factory, and while talking with the chief engineer, telling him about his change word, a hunch, an idea, or an inspiration, call it what would you wish, flashed into his mind. It was this impulse of thought which converted his affiliation into asset, designed to pay dividends in both money and happiness to thousands for all time to come. The sum and substance of that impulse of thought was this. It occurred to him that he might be of help to millions of deafened people who go through life without the benefit of hearing devices. If he could find a way to tell them the story of his changed world, then there he reached a decision to devote the remainder of his life to rendering useful service to hard of hearing. For an entire month, he carried on an intensive research during which he analyzed the entire marketing system of the manufacturer of the hearing device and create a way and means to communicating with the hard of hearing all over the world for the purpose of sharing with them his newly discovered change word. When this was done, he put in writing a 2-year plan based upon his finding. When he presented the plan to the company, he was instantly given a position for the purpose of carrying out his ambition. Little did he dream then he went to work, that he was destined to bring hope and practical relief to thousands of deafened people who, without his help, would have been doomed forever to deaf mutism. Shortly after he became associated with the manufacturer of his hearing aid, he invited me to attend a class conducted by this company for the purpose of teaching deaf mute to hear and to speak, and I have never heard of such form of education. Therefore, I visited the class, skeptical but hopeful that my time would not be entirely wasted. Here I saw a demonstration which gave me a greatly enlarged vision of what I have done to rouse and keep alive in my son's mind the desire for normal hearing. I saw deaf mute actually being taught to hear and to speak through application of the self-same principle I had used more than 20 years previously in saving my son from deaf mutism. Thus, through some strange turn of will of fate, my son Blair and I have been designated to aid in correcting deaf mutism for those as yet unborn, because we are the only living human beings, as far as I know, who have established definitely the fact that deaf mutism can be corrected to the extent of restoring a normal life those who suffer this affliction. It has been done for one, and it will done for others. There's no doubt in my mind that Blair will have been a deaf mute all his life. If his mother and I has not managed to shape his mind as we did, the doctor who attended his birth told us confidentially that child might never hear or speak. A few weeks ago, Dr. Ivan Worthy, a noted specialist on such case, examined Blair very thoroughly. He was astounded when he learned how well my son now hears and speaks. Said his examination indicate that theoretically the boy should not be able to hear at all, but the lad does hear, despite the fact of X-ray picture shows there's no opening in the skull whatsoever from where his ear should be to the brain. When I plant his mind the desire to hear and talk and live as a normal person, there went with that impulse some strange influence which caused nature to become bridge builder and expand gulf of silence between his brain and outer world by some means which the keenest medical specialists have not been able to interpret. I would be sacrilege for me to even conjecture as to how nature performed this miracle. It will be unforgivable if I neglect to tell the world as much I know of the humble part I assume in the strange experience. It was my duty and privilege to say I believe, and not to without a reason, that nothing is impossible to the person who back desire with enduring faith. Verily, a burning desire has diverse way of transmuting itself into physical equivalent. Blair designed normal hearing. Now he has it. He was born with a handicap, which might easily have been sent one with a less definite desire to the street with a bundle of pencil and a tin cup, and handicap now promised to serve as a medium by which he will render useful service to many meanings of hard of hearing. Also, to give him useful employment at adequate financial compensation the remainder of his life. Okay, I will bow to attending another meeting, and I will see you back on.
Natasha. Pick it up. The little white lies I planted in his mind when he was a child, by leading him to believe his affliction would become a great asset, which he could capitalize, has justified itself. Verily, there is nothing right or wrong which belief plus burning desire cannot make real. These qualities are free to everyone. In all my experience in dealing with men and women who had personal problems, I never handled a single case which more definitely demonstrates the power of desire. Authors sometimes make the mistake of writing of subjects of which they have but superficial or very elementary knowledge. It has been my good fortune to have had the privilege of testing the soundness of the power of desire through the affliction of my own son. Perhaps it was providential that the experience came as it did, for surely no one is better prepared than me to serve as an example of what happens when desire is put to the test. If Mother Nature bends to the will of desire, it is logical that mere men can defeat a burning desire. Is it logical? Strange and imponderable is the power of the human mind. We do not understand the method by which it uses every circumstance, every individual, every physical thing within its reach as a means of transmuting desire into its physical counterpart. Perhaps science will uncover the secret. I planted in my son's mind the desire to hear and to speak as any normal person hears and speaks. That desire has now become a reality. I planted in his mind the desire to convert his greatest handicap into his greatest asset. That desire has been realized. The modus operandi by which the astounding result was achieved is not hard to describe. It consisted of three very definite facts. First, I mixed faith with the desire for normal hearing, which I passed on to my son. Second, I communicated my desire to him in every conceivable way available, through persistent, continuous effort over a period of years. Third, he believed me. As this chapter was being completed, news came of the death of not sure what that is. One short paragraph in the news dispatch gives the clue to this unusual woman's stupendous success as a singer. I quote the paragraph because the clue it contains is none other than desire. Early in her career, Meme Schumann Henk visited the director of the Vienna Court Opera to have him test her voice, but he did not test it. After taking one look at the awkward and poorly dressed girl, he exclaimed, none too gently, "With such a face and with no personality at all, how can you ever expect to succeed in opera? My good child, give up the idea. Buy a sewing machine and go to work. You can never be a singer." Never is a long time. The director of the Vienna Court Opera knew much about the technique of singing. He knew little about the power of desire when it assumes the proportion of an obsession. If he had known more of that power, he would not have made the mistake of condemning genius without giving it an opportunity. Several years ago, one of my business associates became ill. He became worse as time went on and finally was taken to the hospital for an operation. Just before he was wheeled into the operating room, I took a look at him and wondered how anyone as thin and emaciated as he could possibly go through a major operation successfully. The doctor warned me that there was little, if any, chance of my ever seeing him alive again. But that was the doctor's opinion. It was not the opinion of the patient. Just before he was wheeled away, he whispered feebly, "Do not be disturbed, Chief. I will be out of here in a few days." The attending nurse looked at me with pity. But the patient did come through safely. After it was all over, the physician said nothing but his own desire to live saved him. He never would have pulled through if he had not refused to accept the possibility of death. I believe in the power of desire backed by faith because I have seen the power lift men from lowly beginnings to places of power and wealth. I have seen it rob the grave of its victims. I have seen it serve as the medium by which men staged a comeback after having been defeated in 100 different ways. I have seen it provide my own son with a normal, happy, successful life, despite nature's having sent him into the world without ears. How can one harness and use the power of desire? This has been answered through this, and the subsequent chapters in this book. This message is going out to the world at the end of the longest and perhaps the most devastating depression America has ever known. It is reasonable to presume that the message may come to the attention of many who have been wounded by the depression, those who have lost their fortunes, others who have lost their positions, and great numbers who must reorganize their plans and stage a comeback. To all these, I wish to convey the thought that all achievement, no matter what may be its nature or its purpose, must begin with an intense burning desire for something definite. Through some strange and powerful principle of mental chemistry, which she has never divulged, nature wraps up in the impulse of strong desire that something which recognizes no such word as impossible and accepts no such reality as failure. Wow. It's deep stuff.
That's deep stuff right there. And just how, I mean, how, you know, the irony of it, written in 1937, that a lot of this, you know, there's never been a better time, the next 10 years, you know, of our life, the most opportunist, the changing of times. Not that we've gone through the depression yet, but it's coming. And we have to realize that, you know, this has been written since 1937. So the accumulation of all that knowledge to that point, nothing's changed. It's all the burning desire. It's all the little things that are in here that seem either really, I don't know, maybe, whatever. No, stop that. We all have to stop. I'm talking to me too. We have to stop that thinking of, no, it's right there. It's in this book. It's the accumulation of knowledge of all of these men that did it. This story right here, like, it sounds too good to be true, or that like that could never really happen. It happens. I've run across, you know, when I was telling Dawn earlier, I've had people come into my life that have just really shifted and changed my life in so many ways, to realize that there's so much more out there. It's not for us to understand, it's for us to know. We know that this stuff happens. We know that if we follow certain paths and patterns, our life is either going to be the same or worse, or all of this is there for us to, you know, to take hold of and take grasp of, and to really believe this stuff. So the burning desire, the belief, the faith, the journey is not for us to understand. It's for us to get on and to keep following and to keep growing and grasping this new knowledge and this new things, but put them into action, not just read them, not just this book. So many have read it, not many have actually put it to work. I've put it to work. Zap's put it to work. Byron's put it to work. Several people I know have really put this to work, and it's worked for them. Why? Because it's facts, it's principles, it's it is what it is. You don't need a thought to make it work. You just have to believe that whatever it is that you want, we can all achieve. We can't keep doing what we've been doing and get anything more than what we've got to this point, because our belief level is what we've got. We have to just go back, apply, so I've been doing that's why I take my time in this, and I'm sorry for anybody that thought we were going to rip through this and whatever. We may do it 2 chapters a week, 3 chapters a week. We may do 1 chapter a week. This chapter right here, to me, is one of the most important ones, because if you skip those 6 steps, you've missed the whole point of this book to this point, and probably going forward. Because those 6 steps, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm looking for big things out of this year. I'm looking for massive things. I did this last year and I came close to my number of what I was looking to hit. It shifts, it goes like that. But again, what it did, it made me think way too small, or look back and realize I wasn't thinking big enough. And when you listen to Zap talk, think bigger than bigger than bigger than big, and bigger than bigger than bigger than bigger than bigger than big. Just keep thinking bigger. Keep thinking more massive. I train clients of all walks of life. Some have a little bit of abundance. Some have generations of abundance already. So it's not just the money. We have to get back into thinking every area of our life can shift and change, and we can manifest whatever we really want. But think bigger. Don't just think that now I got what I was wishing for, hoping for, wrote down on these pages last year, this year as goals, whatever, that we've arrived. And I've talked to Zap about this many times. I don't care what part of life you're talking about. We never arrive. You always have room for growth and to get better and to help more people. And we are in the servant space of what we do and who we are. You wouldn't be on the screen or in this portal to not have a servant mind and a servant attitude and an appetite to learn more and to help more and to share more. So again, I don't mean to take up all the time, but I got to get going in probably 10 minutes just to let everyone know off the bat. But anyone else got anything to add to all that?
Yes, it's powerful, because why his principle is test of time is still relevant, so relevant today, because he's dealing with principles. Just like the gravity, right? You can ignore it and it's still there. And then it's better understand the principle he taught here. So he's dealing with real life principle that make life works, right? Living a rich, wealthy life. And basically what's my takeaway from this chapter is success is predictable. Failure is also predictable. And you either can be success conscious or you can be failure conscious, exactly like his son. He planting his seed, the seed of success conscious with his son, right? What is successful to him is have normal hearing and speaking, living a normal life, right? So because he removed the doubts and fear of his son gonna be deaf, mute, he planted success conscious in his son early age. Actually, Napoleon Hill played a major role in his son's success, because the mind he planted, the success conscious he planted in his son's mind when he was like few years old, right? So that was very powerful. I was thinking, what if Blair have a different father? His life could be very different, right? Sure. So that also caused us to think, you see, if we as either being a parents right now or future parents, if we don't grow our mindset, we can either be a blessing or curse to our children or next generation. So it just, we doing this not just for ourselves, it's for, our children, our grandchildren, pass on the wealthy mindset rather than, the poor mindset, right? It's very powerful.
100%. I agree with you 100%. And, like you said, it, especially for the ones that have kids, or the ones that are planning to have kids or have kids around them, or nephews, nieces, family, neighbors, whatever. Been taught by our mentor, things are caught, not taught. things are caught, not taught. So they're watching. They're watching every move and every conversation that you're having and everything that you're doing. They're listening. They're molding their experience. You can tell them all you want what to do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, but they're watching you. So we have to be the example. We have to be the ones that are out there shining our bright lights, the ones that are really being positive and upbeat and uplifting and letting people know we believe in you. That goes a long way. I believe in each one of you out here. You wouldn't be on this call if you weren't looking for major change in your life into a direction to where you never thought you could go. Maybe you thought, but not like really knew you could go. You didn't have that extreme faith and belief like you thought you did, because it keeps growing. That keeps growing, keeps molding. You keep learning more and you keep getting around more people that have that belief. You see and hear these little stories like this, or in our life of like, oh, I did this and this happened. You'll never believe it. We hear those stories all the time, but we have to know that we're destined for that. We are destined for that. As long as you put the work in and you put the, like they said in here, it wasn't hard work. It wasn't hard labor. This was just a different way of thinking is the work. Retrain your brain, because we are more powerful than you could ever imagine. The things we could tap into are endless. And this book right here in this chapter, like you said, it was that, for me, one of the most that needs to be read and read and read again and reread and relearned and just ingrained and ingrained and ingrained. And some of it is unwiring and untapping the beliefs that were already in our head to believe what this stuff really is, laid out here for us. Because it's just, like you said, it's principles. This isn't anything we have to figure out. It's been figured out. We just have to follow them and believe them and have that burning desire and put it into action instead of just read it. Next chapter, read it, next chapter. This is not one of those books. And I think that's why the average, I don't remember what the number was for success or millionaire, multimillionaires, whatever. Majority of the people that are very successful have read this book on the average of 7 to 10 times.
They said 12 times.
12 times. Yeah, it's just, there's so many, right? It's just, but when I heard that years back, I knew right away, like, okay, I was never a reader. My kids laugh when I tell them I have a book club. They're like, you're a nerd, you're this. I'm like, that's cool. You can call me a nerd all you want. But when I learned that there's so much knowledge that if applied, it could really change generations. I'm not talking about just my life or your life or our kids' life, but our grandkids' life, our great grandkids. These are curses, generational curses that are laid upon families because one person didn't take it upon themselves, or maybe they just didn't have that opportunity. We've had that opportunity. We've learned this knowledge. We have access to all kinds of knowledge. And now that we have Zoom, we have all of this, we have, at our fingertips, we have a computer, we have, YouTube, any amount of knowledge that you want, that's not an excuse anymore. So once we learn that, it's up to us to educate, to help, and to really pour that on to others.
I completely agree. And if you have time, I'd like to tell a little story as well.
Please.
Okay. So during the recession, we were in business, landscape lawn maintenance, and it was year 10 of our business. We were doing really good. My husband went full time, and for the first 3 years, he was driving the truck part time. And so we literally went back from year 10 to year 2. My kids were young, 7, 10, and everything that they heard out of me was, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. And that's what I grew up with. That's what my parents always told us. They went through bankruptcies and different things like that. We're self-employed. We are self-employed. And so the only thing that I could come out with was, we can't afford it. Maybe next time, let's save up for it. Let's budget. So that was 2008, 9, and 10. 2012, I took the step to pay off all our debts. because we leveraged everything to stay in business. 2015, I had everything completely paid off. And I was like, wow. So the whole change of thought was, man, I can do this. I can do this, raise a family, build a business, and keep going. And what we did is we just modified the way we did things, added things to it, like with ACN or other things, just added different things that we could do. We did sod, we did fences, we did trees, we did weed abatement, everything that we could possibly think of. And so the mindset changed. So then when my kids were getting to 12, 13, 14, we had baseball. We were having discussions about buying vehicles and motorcycles and cars and driving in the future. And then my answer to them was no longer, we can't afford it, is how can we afford it? And I brought that through my kids on and
Yes.
on. I'm like, okay, what can we do to afford it? Baseball. My youngest one was huge in baseball, was very good at it. So we used to do vending things where he would sell food at different sports events. And that money that he made extra went to his baseball uniform or whatever he needed, his glove, his helmet, his bat. So then when it came down to him wanting to get a job, he's like, well, I need to drive. Okay, 15 and a half, he can get a motorcycle license. He can drive by himself. He can't drive at night or on the freeway, but he could drive back and forth to work. Okay. So he goes, how can I afford a motorcycle? It's cheap, easy, and it's the only thing that he can drive at the age of 15 and a half, legally. So he did. He asked himself, and he and I got together like, well, how can we do this? How can we do this? And we did. And then it came up to where it's winter time, riding a motorcycle is not as safe. So he's like, okay, I need a car. How can I afford it? What can I do? And I'm like, okay, let's make it happen. What do we do? So the question went from we can't afford it to how can we afford it? And now there is no doubt in my mind, if there's another depression, another recession, whatever it is,
You figure it
I'm
out.
just going to look at it. Yeah, exactly. We're going to figure it out. And say, how can we do it? What can we do?
Words are powerful, and it's just a change of word, right? It's changing one word out for another, and it makes all the difference. And people don't understand how powerful the English language is and the words that you choose to put in there. And that's exactly, I love it. I love the story, and I love the, and it's you've discovered something that you can't take away now, because you have that, and now you just build off of that, and now you figure out other areas to really take everything to the next level. And again, it's getting back into these books and really going back to the principles that you learned to get you to where you are, and to grow off of those. And it's beautiful. I love it.
And life experiences, just taking those and learning and growing from them.
Absolutely. Or, life is a bundle of lessons. And the faster you learn those lessons, the faster you can move on to the next set of lessons that you're going to learn, whether you learn them through your mistake or somebody else's, or your success or somebody else's. You have to learn them and go on and move, and most people get stuck into the same lesson. You're like, no, you haven't learned your lesson yet. You got to learn your lesson, move on, because life is meant to be lived. Life is meant to be fun. Life is meant to be simple. Life is meant to be amazing, not a struggle, a challenge, impoverished, living in lack, living in isolation, living alone, living unloved, no, it is not. It is meant to be around people, around community, around connections, around, brains bouncing off ideas off of each other to grow into something larger, to share more, to love more, to have more, more, again, back to be a light for others, be that example for others, do and be that person that you were called to be. And we were all called to be something more than just you know, in our beds, freaking, you know, wrapped up in our blankets and depressed and anxious and blinds drawn and isolated in our house with masks on and, you know, all this crazy stuff. So just keep spreading your light. Anybody else like to share anything? I got about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Hey, I just like to jump in real quick. I may get a call because I'm actually working right now, but if I do, I'll jump off. First, I want to thank you for the invite
You're welcome.
and setting the wheel in motion. You know, we always find ourselves at crossroads, and I don't think it's by accident that us that's here
Never.
that have taken the call that first probably stemmed inside us, but allowed us to connect and to move forward. I had heard about Think and Grow Rich for many years, had a copy of the book, never found time to get into it, or never took time to get into it. But the bottom line that I take away at this moment, at this point, at this stage of my life is that purpose. I feel like at some point in your life, and I'm speaking to me,
Yes.
something will well up inside you that will cause you to shed the boundaries of holding you back to fully tapping into your purpose. And so this is the bridge. This is the master key that unlocks all that waits us, right? There is no limitation on what's here to support that inspired moment, that inspired mind. And what is great about this experience is that it has no boundaries and it could take on any dimension.
Yes.
When you give it permission.
Yes.
In your life, you know. So
yes,
we become lights as a result of our heeding the call. We become those illuminators.
Yes.
For those others that are, you know, that are lost or looking for that, I forgot what they call that out in the water.
The lighthouse.
The lighthouse, those are markers, because just like each of us have something that's driving us, there's many people who wonder where the answer lies to the yearn that stands within inside them. So I feel grateful that I was able to get the call and then to act on the call and to be amongst this group. And for, the depth of those 2 chapters, or what we've read, really, I think it's 1 chapter, but the depth of that alone, it lets me know how much is in store.
Mm.
Sir.
Just the depth of that. So that's all I want to share at this moment.
Love it, man.
But
no, that's real. And it's that's all it is, man. It's in life, it's all about being real. It's about being transparent. It's about setting your ego and putting it aside, and who cares about anything other than you. I mean, I'm not saying don't care about everyone else, but you got to take care of you to illuminate, to get to everybody else. And so many of us in life, we go through life pleasing others, doing others, making sure everybody's okay, making sure, oh, I don't want to, no, no, get back in this book right here. And we're going to rip this thing apart, man. I'm going to tell you right now, because it's back to, it's not a book where you rush through. Like Zap's mentor had him read it, and by the end of the weekend, he did that not for him to digest this and to get into it, to really, get all the intricacies of it. No, he wanted him to get that into his brain. He wanted to see if he was going to do what he said he was going to do in order for him to be his mentee. Like, I've been around a lot of mentors, not a lot, several that are high level mentors, that so much time is wasted by the people that don't do what they say they're going to do. And that's majority. So the simplest way to win in anything is just to show up. I've been a personal trainer and training people my whole life, but I've also become more of a a mindset coach and a leadership coach and a molded into a spiritual being, into like this whole thing, all by just being that student of these high level people and doing what I say I'm going to do. It may not show up when I think or when they think or on whatever time frame. Throw time frames out. Time frame has nothing to do with this. This all is God's plan. This is all his journey or our journey on his plan. And when things show up, they show up on that time, not when we're ready, when he's ready, when the plan's ready. We think we're ready, then we look back at, oh man, I can't believe that didn't happen. I was so, and then you look back and that thing either never happened, or it was a scandal, or it was like a whole mess of people that came together that were the wrong people and they're conniving and whatever it is. It's like, we always want something to happen that's on our terms and on our time frames, and we just have to let it go. We just have to know that we're on the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, but stay in action mode. Back to the training. I've been in a field where 98.9999% of the people fail every year with their health, with their fitness, with their New Year's resolution is to get in the best shape of their life. Everyone, or get in better shape every year. New Year's resolutions. That's the number one goal. How many people actually do that every year? Not many. And then all it is because at some point in time during the thing, they're like, oh, I failed. Failed what? Go today. It's today forward, always. You can't ever go back. You can't ever, uneat the food you didn't eat. You can't go back and make the calls you said you're going to make. Now, forward. You can't go back on the poor decisions you made, in business and life and relationships and spirituality and whatever. But from right now forward, I didn't coin the phrase. I heard the phrase many years ago. I coined it as my life mission was win the day. If you win the day, every day, you're going to win. You're going to be in a much better place. And I'm not saying every day is amazing, like the best day of my life, but I treat it I treat every moment with purpose. And I treat every moment of my life with intention. And what shows up and the things that happen that are out of my control, I don't deal with those. I let them push them to the side. I handle what I can handle. And then if it's been a bad day, whatever it is, even if at nighttime, you know how I can win the day? I'll pray for 5-10 minutes, a minute. I'll do some push-ups. I'll write in my gratitude journal. I'll send out 3, 4, 5 messages of people, just want to say what's up. I love you, have a great night. I won. You go to bed, you cannot go to bed angry or unhappy, or I don't care if there was 3 deaths in your family or whatever. If you do that, you still won the day. You got way more checks in the positive side than you did in the negative side. That's winning the day. So just remember that. That's just a tidbit for everybody. We all go down that road. We all go down that path of the devil knocking on the shoulder and, God or good on this side. And it's a balance of do it, don't do it, don't do it, do it, do it, don't do it all day long. That's stupid. That's smart. Go ahead. Don't. It's like, but you get better at recognizing that happens. That's where you're like, all right, get up, go for a quick walk. You won. Go get some water. You want to eat some, ice cream or some fries or whatever. And it's like, you're trying to be good. Go have some water. Go drink some water, man. Do a couple sit-ups. Go turn on some Les Brown. Put on, some Tony Robbins. Go put on, a motivational or a spiritual, something just to re-trigger that brain to get it back on course to all of this right here, because that all leads to this, what's in this book. And that's going to lead us all to that next phase of our life, into that next chapter. So I got to go train some people, but I appreciate you guys. I really do. Again, this is as much for me as it is for you. And I was going to do this either way, but I'm getting way more out of this. Like Zap, like he said last time when he was on, it brings more out of me. It brings more out that I know I need to share and I need to get out. And I need to really pour this stuff into people, because I've got 50 of these packed full of like the most amazing knowledge ever. And the more I share it, the more I can see that it helps someone. If you caught one thing out of this whole thing, I won, you won, we all won. We all caught something today. I know we did. So with that, I'll post this in the chat, and we'll get something going. But go back and like really make sure you do those 6 steps and believe it and read it every day, because even if it doesn't show up exactly what you put, it will show up when it's supposed to in that time that it's supposed to. If you don't put anything, guess what? That will show up. I'm gonna leave on that. All right, guys. Peace, man. Appreciate you.